Hello and welcome to the latest SunSport transfer special. The window's slammed shut. That's the last of the transfer deadline day cliches done. Joining me, Ryan Rowe, is our chief football writer, Robert Grieve. We're going to reflect on what has been, in some eyes, a disastrous transfer window for Celtic, depending on what fans you speak to. It's one out, one in, but one big man missing. So the main headline news, Robert, obviously, we were across the story. David Field broke it.
The story.
Kasper Dolberg is not in Glasgow and he won't be coming anytime soon.
No, you said disastrous, I would say shambolic. I mean, what a window for Celtic from their point of view. I was there pre-season with them in Portugal and Italy with Brendan Rodgers, and the whole conversation throughout those weeks has been about the transfer window, and here we are, it's closed, as you say, it's slammed shut. The window always slams shut, it doesn't just close. And Celtic are in a worse state than they were when the window opened. You know, they've lost key players, they've let key players go. Since Kyogo left the club, they haven't signed a new striker. They've let Nicholas Kuhn leave, as you say, big money, great deal from Celtic's point of view, but they let him go. And obviously Jota has an injury. They have not done enough to get replacements in, and understandably for me, the Celtic fans are up in arms.
I mean, Brendan Rodgers was adamant that Adam Idah wouldn't go to Swansea without a replacement. How's he going to be feeling?
Well, listen, that's the thing. Celtic will sign a replacement. I think there is business going on right now. There is conversations happening as we speak. It's going to be someone who's out of contract. I think Iheanacho is clearly someone who could potentially still sign for Celtic. That has to happen before 11 o'clock tonight. Incidentally, if the player, whoever it is going to be registered to play in the Europa League. So something's going to happen today. I'm almost certain of it. But yeah, how's Brendan Rodgers feeling about this? He has not made his feelings any secret in the last few weeks. He's been loud and clear about what he has felt has had to happen. I would love to be a fly in the wall in his office this morning. He is going to be livid. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But at the same time, Ryan, I think for the here and now, I think he has to temper that frustration. You know, I don't see Brendan Rodgers leaving Celtic anytime soon. I think there is maybe a feeling, if you look in social media, maybe fans wondering if this whole situation maybe does push him towards the exit door sooner rather than later. I don't think that will happen. And I think in the here and now, I think he has to almost kind of patch his frustration and kind of put it to the side, because it's the situation he's facing, and it's what he has to deal with. So yeah, I think there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever he'll be furious about what's happened or what hasn't happened. But I think he just has to park it for now.
We'll talk about Sebastian Tounekti, who came in just a moment. He'll certainly fill one of the spaces out in the wing. It might mean for the meantime Adam Idah plays as the central striker again. If it is Kelechi Iheanacho, Rodgers does know him from his time at Leicester, if you like. Hard for us to gauge if that's a better or worse option than Kasper Dolberg, but he's a free agent now and there's probably a reason for that.
Ryan, it's a hard question to ask whether it's a better option than Adam Idah. You know, you're talking about Dolberg. For me, no doubt about it. If Celtic had got Dolberg in, that would have been a fantastic signing. When his name was first mentioned, you're thinking, that's a player of quality, but it's not happened. But being flip it on the other side, Adam Idah was a player in the building. As you say, Brendan Rodgers spoke about it at the time, about how Celtic wouldn't let him go, like they said about Yang, who they didn't let go. But what are they left with? They've let Adam Idah go. They've not got Dolberg. That's fallen on its face. So yeah, a real problem there for Celtic now. But it's the Dolberg situation would have been fantastic for Celtic had it happened. But I still don't think that would have had the Celtic fans celebrating. They would have been still up in arms this morning about how poor this window's been.
Yeah, I mean, Sebastian Tounekti, who has came in, it's funny if you look at the reaction on Twitter, can be a cesspit, but if you look at the reaction to Celtic announcing his signing, this isn't his fault.
No, absolutely not.
He's almost been forgotten about because of all this. Celtic had to double their offer for Tounekti, and he has came in. You know, he played right up until the 87th minute with Hammarby at the weekend. They were desperate to keep him. Celtic did push the boat out, but it's just not going to be enough to appease the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, you mentioned social media. If you look at some of the responses to Stephen Welsh going to Motherwell, I mean, wow, Stephen Welsh is just on his way out, and it was just like an avalanche of abuse about the situation at that moment yesterday. But yeah, Tounekti's come in. That's an interesting one for me again, though. They're paying what, £5 million for a player who moved 6 months ago for $1 million. You know, so Anderlecht, Hammarby, it seems, had Celtic.
They've done a Jeffy.
You did a Jeffy. It seems as though they had Celtic kind of where you don't want to be held, you know, in terms of that deal getting done, you know. So again, they've been backed into a corner with that one. They've had to get it done. They've probably paid over the odds for the player. But again, that's a situation that Celtic have found themselves in recent windows. It happened last season with Austin Trusty. It happened with Arnie Engels. You know, they've been in the position. It happened with Adam Idah, where they have had to get deals done at the last minute and they have paid over the odds. So, but you're right in what you said at the start, Ryan. That's not the boy's fault. He's come in. Another player that arguably is a player who could be a good player for Celtic. So it's not his fault, the situation. But yeah, it's not a good look for Celtic right now.
Do you think he goes straight into the team when they come back after the international break?
Yeah, well, that time will tell on that one. You know, the Celtic are top heavy almost on kind of right or left
one side.
On one side. You know, what Brendan Rodgers likes is always getting mixed up with this one. Is a right-sided midfielder who cuts in on his left.
Yep.
You know,
that's why he's had Negrin out there, isn't it?
That's why, and that's what they don't have. You know, it's the kind of the one that Patrick Roberts was his player the first time. They don't have that anymore. You know. So yeah, there's going to have to be a bit of kind of moving and shaking, I think, in the roles and what they play. But you mentioned Nygren came in. I watched him this summer pre-season and as a central midfield position, and he looked good. He's been moved around a lot in the last. Is he a wider player? Is he a more central player? So I think there's going to be a lot of kind of moving and shaking. But you mentioned Idah as well. I felt at one point a few weeks ago that Idah might be on his way out of the club. He's obviously still there. Is he a striker? Is he a winger? How is he going to be playing? Is he going to be happy about getting chopped and changed? I sometimes wonder when he does get moved around a little bit, as it happens, that it's maybe affecting him, because he's certainly off form, or certainly has been since the start of the season. I think he was one of the big culprits in the two games against Kairat, home and away. He missed big chances, obviously missed a penalty. I think his form has dipped seriously. But yeah, I think there's going to have to be a lot of kind of give and take on that position, because essentially Celtic don't have a right-sided midfielder who cuts on his left. They just don't have it. Yep.
So, talking about that position, the striker who did leave, as we all know, Adam Idah, how do we reflect on his time at Celtic? You obviously mentioned that Celtic perhaps felt they needed to pay over the odds because he was such a hit on loan, scored that cup final goal. Despite the fact they had good stats last season, he just never seemed to win the fans over.
I don't think he was a right fit for Celtic, in all honesty, Ryan. I've said this numerous times on these chats before. He scored big moments for Celtic, given that you just mentioned the cup final. He did have other big moments for Celtic where he scored important goals last season. There was no doubt about that. He was a genuine big guy. I had a lot of admiration for him, actually, the way he came in. But for me, he didn't fit into the way he played. The amount of times you would watch Celtic on the touchline, you see Brendan Rodgers, when the ball would come to the right more often than not, and that's when Kyogo was there, he would come in, link the play, and that's when Celtic and Idah was always on his heels. He wasn't that kind of player. It was so unnatural for him to play that position, and Brendan Rodgers would literally be standing with his arms out, clearly frustrated at what he wasn't getting from him. But it wasn't his game. You know, he was as essentially a target man. He was wanting to pin defenders and play that role, and that's not how Celtic plays. Certainly not at home when teams are sitting in, they're trying to defend men behind the ball. It wasn't his game. It wasn't his game at all. So he scored a number of goals for Celtic. I think he can probably walk away from Celtic with his head held high. But how well he did, you just see his numbers aren't bad. He certainly, as I say, I think he can hold his head relatively high in how well he did. But for me, he wasn't a right fit for Celtic. They had to look to replace him. It was no surprise to me that he moved on. I think I mentioned these chats a few times, that I felt certain that Adam Idah would be one of the guys that would go, because I think Brendan Rodgers, from what you could see and what you were hearing, he wasn't fitting into the way he wanted to play. But he's better than what they have now as things stand, Ryan. You know, that's the problem. Celtic have got nothing right now, and if he comes in later on today or another, is he better? A guy who's not been playing much football recently, certainly hasn't been scoring many goals recently. Maybe it looks as though he's short of match fitness from what the pictures look like. So I don't know how this is going to shape. There's also
that question, sorry Robert, that he was linked with Celtic in January, and I'd imagine there'll be a section of the fan base that said, well, he said no back then.
Well, that's the thing, Ryan, and also 100%, and I think that's a great question, because it comes back to, why have they let this go so long? If he was the one they were wanting to get back to, it's almost as if he's been kind of left there as if worst comes to the worst, we can get in the actual win. But I also think it's It's such a bad look when you're a club the size of Celtic and you've got such a huge resource in terms of recruitment, allegedly, and you end up, if they do it, you end up getting a player who basically the manager's got in speed dial. You know, that's you've got to be better. You've got to be better than that. You know, I find that kind of quite baffling. You know, that when push comes to shove, if it happens, and it's not happened yet, but that's going to be the shakedown of this. You know, a player that the manager's worked with before, and it's happened before. Jeffrey Schlupp came in last season, a player the manager knows. By the way, maybe coming to Kieran Tierney in a minute, someone who the club... There's been so much recruitment that's been done in the last few years. Jota, a player of the club, that's just been...
It's in the contacts book.
It's in the contacts book. You know, it's someone that they just lift the phone up to and get done. I don't think that's good enough for Celtic. And I can seriously understand... I'm often kind of critical sometimes of fans who are up in arms about how things develop, but I tell you what, Celtic should wait a few days before they start sending these emails out for Europa League packages. If they do it the next few days, they could be in for a shock.
Yeah, that inbox won't look too nice. So let us know how you're feeling, Celtic fans, in the comments. We'll quickly talk briefly. You mentioned just at the top of the show, Stephen Welsh going out on loan. Yeah. I think he was quite disappointed when a couple of avenues closed. You know, the Plymouth Argyle one looked kind of perfect. Motherwell a good fit for Stephen Welsh?
I think so. Motherwell playing some really good football this season under new management. I think there's something good happening at Fir Park. I think the way they play will probably suit Stevie Welsh. I think he's a good young player. Well, I say young, he's not exactly...
He's been a bit of a while, but
but for me, he's a kid. Young. He's someone who needs to play football. Yeah. You know, we still think of him as young. That's what I'm saying. We do still think of him as a young player, but he's essentially not a young player. He's been someone who's been around the Celtic squad. He's been out on loan. He's been abroad. He's had a number of loans, I think, now. He needs to go and play football. And if he can go to Motherwell, get a sustained run of games, then who knows what the future holds for him. But yeah, I did feel a little bit sorry from when that announcement got made yesterday from Celtic. If you looked on their official Twitter page, wow, the abuse that was flying in the back of that was something else.
Yeah, as I said, that's not his fault. So we can look at the window as a whole. If we start to reflect, you know, you're definitely of the opinion Celtic are weaker than at the start of the window.
I don't think there's any argument with that, Ryan. I don't think there's any argument with that whatsoever. I think the business that they have done is far outweighed by the business that hasn't been done. You know, I think that's been a real problem. I say, come back to Kieran Tierney, again, a big summer signing way back, pre-transfer.
Yep, Derek
McGregor broke the story, fantastic story that it was, but everyone at the same time had concerns about Kieran Tierney's fitness, where he was in his career, how long it would take for him to get back up to speed, and also how he fitted in to the Celtic way of playing. We're talking about Adam Idah, and how, for me, he didn't fit into the way Celtic play now. I think there's also question marks over Kieran Tierney, because he's not the all energy, all action fullback that he was in the first spell at Celtic. He doesn't have those legs anymore, rightly or wrongly, and he doesn't play the game the way that...
No, the reason Arsenal were keen to let him go is because he never came inside. I don't
think there's any doubt. If you look at the two careers of Greg Taylor and Kieran Tierney, Kieran Tierney, you would say, is of a higher standard than Greg Taylor. But Greg Taylor did a vital job for the Celtic team because of the way he played. That inverted role that we talk about now, and coming in and being comfortable in that position. Kieran Tierney doesn't do that. No. You know, so that's just one of the positions that they've been looked at. They've obviously signed backup for that there as well, because he's not playing 90 minutes anymore. You know, I think that's fast becoming an issue for Celtic. I hope that Kieran Tierney gets back to a level where he can play 90 minutes. I think Scotland need him as well. I think that's one to watch. I said this at the time when Kieran Tierney signed for Celtic, when he came back, that if he's not playing regularly for Celtic, there will be fans and maybe even management at Celtic who think, why are we letting this guy go and play for Scotland or go involved in Scotland squads? Brendan Rodgers has done it before.
Yep, he has.
He's done it recently with Callum McGregor in terms of, I need you to be taking a rest when these international breaks come around. So I wonder if that's something we'll be talking about soon. But yeah, that's just one of the issues. I think it's fast becoming a topic of conversation. Brendan Rodgers was asked about it after the game against Rangers at the weekend, and he was saying we pretty much expected it to be the case that it would take a bit of time. But here we are, we're in September now, Ryan. You know, this is a guy who didn't play a lot of football. He should have been coming into Celtic fresh, ready to go. Season. He's not 35. You know, what is he, 27, 28? You know, this is a guy who should be the peak of his career. He's had his injury problems before, but I don't know. I think that's, as I say, it's becoming a topic of conversation, but right now it's not the topic of conversation. There are Celtic fans out there, Celtic fans watching this. Kieran Tierney's not the name at the top of the list. It's the guys behind the scenes. It's Dermot Desmond, it's Peter Lawwell, it's Michael Nicholson. And I tell you what, they have got some serious questions to answer. And you say at the top of the show here, it would be fascinating. It will be fascinating to see how Brendan Rodgers addresses this when he next speaks. And then I know there's an international break now, so it may be a few days or maybe even a week or so before we actually hear from Brendan Rodgers. I think maybe by that point he'll have calmed down. But I think if you're on a fly in the wall in his office right now, that would be fascinating.
Yep, so Celtic haven't spent a lot, but they have welcomed in 11 players in total. Still to get a full review of how they are. It's still early days. They did, though, the likes of Palma, Nawrocki, Lagerbielke, Kwon, they're all away. We've mentioned Kuhn and Taylor were big departures for another reason. Out of the new signings, Yamada, Simpson, Pusey and Amura we've seen very little of. Does it really mean by default that Benjamin Nygren's the standout signing so far?
I would say so, yeah. In fairness to him, I know he wasn't particularly good at the weekend against Rangers, but I've been relatively impressed with Nygren. I was in pre-season camp with Celtic, both in Portugal and in Italy, and he, for me, he played well. There was real signs there that Nygren could be a good player for Celtic. I think the problem is he's moved around a little bit. I don't think that's helped him at all. As you would imagine, any new player going to a new club, I think it's probably impacted in some of his performances. But yeah, the one thing Celtic have been good at in the last few years, Ryan, is getting players out and getting money back for them. So you mentioned the players that they have let go. That's one thing that they have been pretty astute at in terms of, and even like Idah, where they spend a lot of money on them, they're always going to kind of get it back, kind of wash their face on it. That's something they are pretty good at. But yeah, the names that you mentioned there's so many guys that have come in who are squad players. Amura's come in, looked fantastic, maybe a couple of pre-season games, and the Celtic fans going, oh, great, this could be the next big thing. Brendan Rodgers very quickly nipped that in the bud, made it very clear. I mean, his comments before the first leg against Kairat, when he was asked about him, were pretty damning. Yep. I felt, this is, again, not someone who's 19, he's mid-20s, he's come into the club, and again, after the back of his first couple of games, and Brendan Rodgers was very quickly to try and calm the kind of talk down on him, and then he came out basically and said, listen, he's fine against Queen's Park, and these teams, this boy must be wondering what he's done to deserve this. Shin Yamada's the same, he's another player come in. I remember speaking to Brendan Rodgers about it. We were in Italy, again, trying to calm it down. He's not maybe for the here and now. So Celtic have signed a few players now who've come in. Pusey's not even played yet. We've not seen him. I think he was on the bench for maybe the European game. I think he was. But we've not clapped eyes on him.
No.
So there have been signings been made, but I wonder also if that's been part of the messaging from Brendan Rodgers in terms of, yeah, these guys are coming in, but these aren't guys who are going to take us to the next level, and that's very much what he was after. I mean, a real interesting one, Yang, for me. I mean, we were speaking about him a couple of months ago, and there was again, Brendan Rodgers was talking about how, listen, he's someone who could play in a lot of games for us. You're almost kind of writing it off, thinking, no, that can't be the case. This has been a squad player, and this is someone who at best is a squad player. Here he is, he's still at Celtic, he's still in the building. He thought he was going, he thought he was on his way yesterday. He's not been allowed to go, unlike Adam Idah, and here he is, going to probably be a key player now for Celtic. For me, that's quite staggering, in all honesty.
So if you use the word shambolic to sum up the transfer window in one word...
I don't think there's any other way, in fairness, Ryan.
How would you sum up in a sentence?
A sentence, I think, just nowhere near good enough. Nowhere near good enough. If you're a Celtic season ticket holder, if you are someone who follows the club home and away, I was in Kazakhstan last week, a long trek to get there. There were 300 or 400 Celtic fans there. Guys who've paid really good money to get, almost to China, to watch a team, a long trek, planes, trains and automobiles to get there. If you're someone who like that, or someone who's going to the Celtic Park every week, who's paying your money and your merchandise, who's going to be asked to pay Europa League tickets when you were expecting to be paying for Champions League tickets, and this has happened, I can really understand why you're so angered, upset, frustrated. I mean, people talk about the Celtic board, Peter Lawwell, Michael Nicholson, even Dermot Desmond, about being risk averse. For me, it's the opposite. For me, the fact that they've got themselves into this position is because they've been so prepared to take a gamble.
Yep.
They should have done this months ago. Now, I really do understand and appreciate that it's not always easy to get deals done and over the line. Celtic, I think, thought Dolberg was done. At the last minute, he has a change of heart. He decides not to come. But to get yourselves into that position is really, really poor work from the guys behind the scenes there. And I think that comes down to the risk that they're willing to take, you know. And it's like it's the same situation they are now with the European games. I just think they've backed themselves into such a bad corner that I don't know. I can really understand why Celtic fans are up in arms. So
let us know how you feel. Let us know how exactly you feel in the comments, Celtic fans. If you can bear it, we'll have a Rangers transfer roundup as well on the YouTube channel. Also, stay tuned. Derek McGregor will have his latest one-on-one, and you'll see Robert in the latest episode of The Set Piece.